In the climactic turn of events in the latest episode, Jin leaned in and confidentially whispered into Jia's ears, boldly declaring that he favored her choice of clothes over her mother's selection. This unexpected and intimate exchange injected an extra dose of sweetness into their shopping escapade, leaving Jia enveloped in a warm and elated sensation. A peculiar silence hung between the two, creating an atmosphere thick with unspoken sentiments. Jia, donning a bright smile, couldn't help but question the sincerity of Jin's words. Was this a genuine expression of preference, or did he merely choose to align with her to safeguard her mood, delicately avoiding any potential hurt feelings? Emotions surged within Jia, and she playfully regressed into childlike behavior, exclaiming, "What are you saying all of a sudden? You won't earn any brownie points just for complimenting me." Amidst this lively exchange, Zhang, observing the scene, emitted a sound from her throat, signaling her presence. In that moment, Jia, suddenly aware of Jin's mother's company, witnessed Zhang looking away. Zhang's subsequent remark, "Kids, I know you are very close, being newlyweds and all, but this is a public space," carried a trace of embarrassment in her voice. Jia quickly grasped the situation, and a humorous idea immediately sparked in her mind. Outside the store, Jia halted Jin in a discreet corner and urgently expressed, "Mincheol, don't you think your mother-in-law is growing suspicious about the true nature of our relationship? Wouldn't it be wise to address and rectify this situation?" Jin, acknowledging the concern, responded, "Yes, I do, but it might be challenging given my mother's keen instincts." Jia, wearing a mischievous grin, countered, "True, but a brilliant idea just crossed my mind. Interested in hearing it?" When Zhang emerged from the bathroom, she was momentarily speechless, taken aback as Jin and Jia flaunted matching couple clothes that exuded a cheesy aura. Zhang, cautiously recovering from the surprise, inquired, "When did you get those clothes?" Jia, with a radiant smile, replied, "Oh, these? We happened to spot some couple wear on sale, and I thought it would be delightful to wear them with my honey." Jia's strategic move was influenced by the recent incident. Reflecting on her parents' tendency to display affection publicly, Jia knew how it made others uncomfortable. The homeroom teacher's embarrassment served as a vivid memory, leading Jia to name her proposed Operation Sunstorm, highlighting the teacher's struggle in handling romantic scenarios. Jia's plan was foolproof: if you can't avoid it, then make the opponent avoid it. She strategized that by engaging in excessive flirting, they could make Zhang uncomfortable enough to divert her attention, alleviating any suspicions. Taking the first step, Jia called out to Jin in a childish manner, saying, "Dear, you are walking too fast, let's walk together. Can you slow down a little bit?" Jin, caught off guard, was stunned and opted for silence, avoiding a response. Frustrated with Jin's lack of cooperation, Jia nervously glanced at Zhang, expecting her to see through the act. However, to Jia's delight, Zhang appeared entirely convinced, making the performance a resounding success. At the dessert cafe, while indulging in ice cream, Jia persisted in her lovey-dovey couple act. The display of affection between Jia and Jin was so conspicuous that anyone observing would find their relationship highly suspicious. From the way they got together to their current interactions, it was only natural for someone to question the legitimacy of their connection. Certainly, if they escalated their lovey-dovey act too abruptly, Jia knew it would only raise suspicions. This was a risky gamble, and as Zhang observed their closeness, she couldn't bear the embarrassment. However, for Jia, this was the moment to press a little harder, and she felt frustrated because her efforts alone weren't sufficient. So, she whispered in Jin's ear, "Hey, Mincheol, cooperate with me. Don't make me carry you all the way. Can't you do something more couple-like?" Hearing this, Jin realized it was time to contribute. He picked up a spoon of ice cream, brought it towards Jia's mouth, and playfully said, "Now say ah, my little birdie." Jia shouted in embarrassment and shock, while even Zhang couldn't contain her surprise at Jin's endearing term. Their lovey-dovey flirting continued until they reached home. Upon arrival, Zhang remarked, "I see that you are both very close to each other, more so than I thought. I seem to be intruding on you newlyweds, so let me get out of your way. I'll take my leave to my home." In the end, Operation Storm and Sun was a massive success. Even Zhang seemed to have surrendered to their lovey-dovey display, or so they thought. However, as rain suddenly started falling, Zhang looked at Jin and said, "It would seem that I need to rely on you both once more." Thus, the victor of the story was the sun, but the storm didn't lose either. It seemed they were determined to win in any way possible. The aftermath of this situation was that Jin and Jia had to sleep in the same room because of Zhang's unexpected stay. In the rainy stormy night, Jin and Jia decided that Jia should sleep on the bed and Jin on the floor. However, Jia couldn't bring herself to agree with this arrangement and insisted, "Hey Mincheol, I'll sleep on the floor." After all, I can't bring myself to agree with the owner sleeping on the floor. Jean immediately reassured her, "You don't need to worry about that. We are a married couple, aren't we? And you are my wife. Don't worry about it and make yourself comfortable, really." Before Jia could respond, Zhang knocked on the door and opened it, asking, "Hey, guys, can I have a moment?" Jean and Jia adjusted themselves on the bed to maintain the act, and Jia said, "Yes, mother-in-law, how can we help you?" Seeing Jean and Jia on the bed, Zhang apologized, "Sorry, I didn't know you were busy. I'll talk to you in the morning." The excitement of the situation had peaked 15 minutes ago. The mother-in-law, forced to stay another night due to a sudden downpour, had noticed a single piece of furniture from the very first time she visited. She inquired, "Why is there a bed in this room too? Don't you already have a bed in your room, Mincheol?" Jia found herself unable to come up with any excuse in this dire situation. However, Jean stepped in and explained, "It's because I sleep talk and move around a lot. You remember when I used to move around during my sleep when I was young? It seems I still have that old habit of mine." So Jia was very uncomfortable, and a few days ago, I bought her a bed so she could sleep well. Jia was overjoyed to hear such a sensible answer from Jean. She couldn't believe that the seemingly dense musclehead gamer could provide such a thoughtful response. Zhang, while somewhat satisfied with Jin's answer, upon closer inspection of the bed, remarked, "However, this bed looks too well used to be bought a few days ago. Did you buy it secondhand?" This demonstrated that Zhang hadn't lost her sharp observational skills. So, presently, Jean and Jia found themselves in a situation where they had to share a room. To avoid suspicion, the smartest thing to do was to stay in the same bed. Jean suggested sleeping opposite each other to make the most efficient use of space, employing his engineering mindset. However, Jia was annoyed with this approach, so they settled on sleeping back to back. Meanwhile, in the hall, Zhang discovered an envelope. In the bedroom, Jia faced a problem sleeping. With their backs touching, she could feel everything so clearly, from the sound of their hearts beating to each shudder of their bodies and each breath they took. It was embarrassing for her, but not only that, when Jia saw Jin's hand shaking, she couldn't ignore it. She exclaimed, "Oi, Jin Mincheol, what's wrong? Are you sick? Why is your body shaking so much? Are you unwell?" Jin explained, "No, I am not sick or anything. It's just that when I sleep on my side, my head doesn't match the height of the pillow. So, don't worry about me and sleep. I am slowly getting used to it." Jin turned his face and added, "I am sorry, Jia. I feel like I shouldn't have spoken up earlier. I should have just kept still. I felt strangely restless, and as a result, I only increased my mother's suspicion." Jia immediately said, "You did well. My mind went completely blank, you know. It must have been you being her son, your answer was good." She smiled and continued, "Hey, Mincheol, lie down properly." Jean laid properly on the bed. Jia asked, "Are you comfortable now that you are lying down properly?" Jean said, "I am comfortable, but why do you want me to lie down properly all of a sudden?" Jia lifted Jin's hand and laid her head on his hand, saying, "To do this, how about we lie down like this? We can be comfortable and save space." Before Jean could say anything, she added, "I am feeling a little bored, so I'll give you a quiz. Answer well. Here's the question. I, Han Jia, have something I wish of Jin Mincheol. What could that possibly be?" She slowly slid her hand down his chest and continued, "Maybe you have an idea?" Jean asked her, "Can you give me a hint?" Jia cutely said, "Sorry, but I can't." 3 points if you get it, so the answer is, Jean raised his hand and said, "I got it. It's a savings account with 1,000,000,000 under your name, Jia." Annoyed, Jia said, "So tempting, but that's not the answer. Can't you give that?" Jean said, Was it supposed to be something I own?" Irritated, Jia said, "Yes, didn't you hear the question? Forget it. Now I'll give you the hint. It's something that you can give right now." Jean nonchalantly answered, "Chicken feet." Jia irritatingly said, "You wanna die? Are you just pretending to be stupid now?" She grabbed his face and continued, "Pretending to be stupid, are you? Muzzled, look at you biting your teeth." Jean suddenly called out Jia's name, rolled over, and hugged her. Jia embarrassingly asked, "Hey, Mincheol, what the heck are you doing suddenly?" Jean whispered, "Wasn't this what you want?" Jia just blushed and didn't answer anything. Jean immediately asked, "Why aren't you answering? Am I right, or am I wrong?" Jia's cheeks turned red with blush, and she softly said, "You are right." Jia couldn't fathom what was happening to her. Initially, she intended to playfully tease Jin before drifting off to sleep, but Jin's response was the exact opposite of what Jia had anticipated. Out of the blue, Jin placed his hands over Jia's ears, leaving her utterly flabbergasted, anticipating that Jin might resume the moment he left off on the sofa. However, much to her surprise and dismay, Jin simply inserted earplugs into her ears, a mischievous grin adorning his face as he declared, "With this, you can sleep in peace now." Confused, Jia queried, "What do you mean by in peace?" Jin responded, "You're scared of lightning, aren't you?" Jia, with a stern expression, retorted, "I'm not a kid. Why would I be scared of lightning?" Undeterred, Jin continued, "Really? I thought you were scared because you kept flinching every time there was lightning. Then why did you say right earlier?" Jia had said right earlier because Jin hugged her, and she mistook it for his answer. Now embarrassed, she hugged him, confessing, "Yes, you are right. I am scared of lightning. I am so scared." Jia's heart shattered as she concluded that Jin was indeed the most oblivious person she had ever encountered. To compound matters, Jin was tightly embracing Jia in his sleep, his formidable strength making her feel as though her neck were trapped in a machine. Despite her best efforts, Jia couldn't escape his firm grip. In the early morning, Zhang woke up first, discovering Jin's cat scratching his bedroom door. She opened it and took a peek inside Jin's room, only to find Jin and Jia soundly sleeping like children. Zhang's expression softened, and she closed the door without disturbing them. When Jia woke up, she was surprised to see that Zhang had already set the dining table with a hearty breakfast. Even more surprising was that Zhang had prepared all the meals and came to wake Jia up. This scenario seemed contrary to the usual drama plot where waking up after the mother-in-law would lead to scolding. However, Zhang's actions were different. Seeing Jia's surprise, Zhang asked, "What's wrong? Is this perhaps not to your taste, or do you feel hurt somewhere?" Jia smiled, "No, not at all, I am totally fine." After a moment of silence, Zhang called out to Jia and said, "Hey, could you make some time after we eat? I have something I want to talk about, just between the two of us." Jia agreed with a smile, but inwardly, she felt uneasy. After breakfast, Jia and Zhang went for a walk outside. Jia's mind was in turmoil, wondering why Zhang wanted to talk to her alone. She feared that Zhang might have already figured everything out. Suddenly, Zhang said, "My daughter-in-law." She showed Jia the envelope and asked, "Would this be enough?" Jia was confused, trying to comprehend what Zhang was talking about. Seeing Jia's expressions, Zhang clarified, "It's money, like what mothers-in-law do for their daughters-in-law in the dramas. So use this money to enjoy with Mincheol, you get me? And I'll give you more if this isn't enough." Jia couldn't believe Zhang's words and exclaimed, "Please hold on. You are kidding, right?" Zhang nonchalantly said, "Yes, I was. You were so tensed up that I thought I'd joke around a little to lighten the mood. So take a look inside it." When Jia opened the envelope, she felt a surge of tension. Inside was the same contract that Jin and Jia had made for their marriage. Zhang said, "It's not that I was looking for it. I couldn't fall asleep, so I thought I'd at least leave you guys some pocket money and leave. Then, I thought it would be nice to take a look at your wedding photos, but what I found inside was this. This is usually called a contract, a sham marriage, is it not?" Jia and Jin had been compromised, or rather, it was even worse. Jia tried to explain to Zhang that it's not like what she is thinking, but in reality, Jia had been sloppy. She should have made hiding it her first priority. With such irrefutable evidence coming to light, regardless of what she said, it would be meaningless. Zhang calmly said, "No need to be so scared. I was aware of it all along. Wouldn't you feel skeptical if you were in my position? On New Year's Day when my son came to visit, I signed him up for a marriage matchmaking, but 2 hours later, he not only brought over a girl he decided to marry but also brought you, Jia, of all people. Regardless of that, honestly, I was glad that the one he decided to marry was none other than you, Jia." Deep down, Zhang wished for an outcome like this to happen. She put her hand on Jia's shoulder and smiled, saying, "Jia, please take good care of Mincheol from here on out. Please carry on like this from here on out. As your teacher, no, as your mother-in-law, I'll cheer you both on until the end." Jia confusingly asked, "Pardon, but cheer us on, not break us up?" Zhang immediately said, "What on earth are you saying? Why would I do such a thing to a perfectly functional couple? Isn't that something for the two of you to decide? You are both fully grown adults who made their choices. I apologize for suddenly visiting and inconveniencing the both of you. Before coming, I was concerned for you both, but I felt relieved after seeing you both together. Regardless of whether there are feelings or not between you both seem to be living well with one another, so I was relieved. After some time, Jong called a taxi and got ready to depart. While going, she said, daughter-in-law, I'd like for your firstborn to be a daughter. Jia couldn't take those words and just said, see you, just be well, mother. Han Jia and Jia Mincheol, the scammer couple with a special mission to act like a lovey-dovey couple and fool mother, had successfully completed their mission. Jin smiled and said, you did well, Jia. Jia also looked happy and said, and so did you, good job. Still, Jin had one doubt in his mind, so he asked, Jia, about earlier this morning when you and my mother went out to talk for a bit. My mother didn't say anything weird to you, did she? While Jia was talking to Jong about the mentioning of a loveless marriage, Jia said to her, Mother, it's not like that. It's just a loveless marriage. In reality, I think I have fallen for Mincheol. At that time, Jong thought Jia was still pretending to be a lovey-dovey couple, but in reality, Jia genuinely started falling for Jin. And now it was high time for Jia to hold her emotions, and she determinedly said, Jin Mincheol, should we start going out for real? Jin couldn't understand what Jia was saying, and he asked, what? Jia nervously said, don't take this to heart. It's like we don't know if something like this will happen in the near future, right? So for whenever that happens, instead of acting like we're a lovey-dovey couple, what if we became an actual couple? By doing this, we can put on a much more convincing act. Jin suddenly grabbed Jia's hand, pushed her towards the wall, and said, no, I am fine with becoming a real couple but not for that sort of reason. Isn't me liking you reason enough? In reality, I like you, Han Jia. Let's go out. Jia still couldn't believe Jin's words and asked, when you say, like, do you mean that you, like, me in a, let's start dating, way? Jin nodded in agreement. Jia, with a slight irritation, asked, since when? Jin said, not since when, even now. Jia asked, you, even? Jin stopped in the middle, never mind, Jia, that was a slip of the tongue. What I was trying to say was, now, right here and now, I like you. Jia stole a gaze from Jin and softly said, I don't know if it really is true that you like me. Well then, if you kiss me within 5 seconds, I might be able to know. Jin got so surprised hearing Jia's request, and he asked to be sure, you mean right here? Jia embarrassingly shouted, what do you mean by right here then? What was that wall slam just now in your hands? Jin said, it's just that I wanted to have a closer look at your face. Jia softly said, whatever. If you kiss me in 5 seconds, we start going out. Jin slowly held Jia's face, brought his face closer towards Jia's. And suddenly, a woman came out of the elevator. Immediately, Jin and Jia moved away from each other. The woman in the elevator got irritated, thinking couples nowadays just can't get enough. There was an awkward silence in the elevator. And when something awkward happens, the numbers on the elevator always change slowly. After calming down a little, Jia looked upon her sudden decisions today that she had made, like while talking to Jin's mother what she said about falling for Jin or asking a kiss from Jin so suddenly, her judgment was too clustered today. Jin tapped on Jia's shoulder and asked to see her phone. When Jia saw the phone, her expressions flushed with embarrassment because Jin messaged Jia asking, is it fine if it's 5 seconds from now? Jin angrily replied to him, are you crazy? There's someone in front of us. What the hell is wrong with you? Jin suddenly pulled Jia and kissed her. Jia tried to pull away, but eventually, she got mesmerized in the movement. After a few seconds, when Jin pulled away from Jia, Jia grabbed him and unexpectedly gave a kiss. Jin and Jia just forgot what's happening in their surroundings and dived into their own world. Meanwhile, Jong was in the taxi, smiling alone as she looked at Jin and Jia's childhood photos. She thought it'd be nice if Jin and Jia were a little more honest with each other and confessed their love. However, Jong was not aware that the day she came into their lives was like a storm that took away the rain clouds. And that's how finally, Jin and Jia started going out. As for the woman in the elevator, out of embarrassment, she just pretended that she didn't see anything.